We start the papers this morning in this Nigeria. On the front page, US UK terror alert, hit nation's economy hard, says federal government on page 4. This is a conversation that's been going on for the longest time. We've been talking about it since last week, actually, as countries have been putting on notices and telling their citizens not to travel to Nigeria unless they need to. EFCC probing $6 billion Mambila power project, says minister. Aftermath of elder statesman Amechi's death, Ohaneze calls for Kanu's release on page 10. 2023, why Fubara should be voted next Rivers governor, according to Obua. At the top of the paper, okay, no, let's go to the bottom. We have SAC. Aviation workers lock down Lagos MMA2 and disrupt flights. This is a conversation we look forward to having as we proceed with the show, but the details are on page 12 and on page 15. Now, whilst they're striking in the air, they're also striking with the road transporters. We're seeing that Lagos PDP MC Oluomo beg commercial drivers to suspend strike. Anti-graft agency arrests Kogi assembly candidate with 326 million naira cash. Joe.
Wait.
326 million naira cash.
You know, yesterday when we saw this story, someone said this is a dividend. Part of the dividends you get when Emefiele came out with that
redesigning of the
naira, that you start to see a lot of people wanting to move monies from one point to the other in order for them to ensure that they could actually change it. I was shocked. That sum of money,
cash. What's the explanation? How can you really justify having that much money? I mean, the arguments for the redesigning of the naira, there are a lot of arguments for and against. We talked about it yesterday on the show. You know, some of the arguments, like the CBN has said, is basically to ensure that money is outside the commercial vaults of this bank, or the vaults of the commercial banks are brought back into the bank. They're also trying to regulate mutilated notes. Interestingly, yesterday I went to withdraw some cash and I saw that the notes were mutilated. I said exactly why the CBN wants to redesign the naira notes. Arguments for and against, but here's one of the outcomes. That's all I can take this morning. Of course, I cannot wrap up this Nigeria without acknowledging the story on page 5. Tears flow over death of singer Davido's son Ifeanyi. When I saw the story, I kept hoping it was a lie. I kept hoping they would say, "Oh, it's just a rumor," and it's not true. But
you know, everyone came up with different. When things happen like this, especially to popular people who are loved by many, people who are well known, there'll be questions upon questions. E.g., where was the nanny? Where was the minder? How did the child sneak out? Could it be he was going to practice what daddy taught him a few weeks ago? Wasn't there anybody? Usually there's a host of persons in the house. Where were they? So many questions.
Very sad.
So
we join the rest of the world, because really tributes have been pouring in from across the continent and across the world. So we join the rest of the world to share our condolences with the family. That's all I can take on this Nigeria.
All right, away from this Nigeria this morning, let's go straight to another paper. We'll take you straight to the southern part of Africa. So Tan is where we're going to. Although that paper has covered the tan there. I mean, that's a design this morning. I was trying to look for the end. I'm like, where is it? Well, you might be wondering, why is she raising that paper up, or that placard? Well, that's an activist. Now, during the presidential summit on gender-based violence and femicide in Midrand yesterday, you do have Thulani Mbele. There she's raising it up, and she's talking about a whole lot, pushing for activism in terms of gender-based violence, which has been a major problem South Africa needs to deal with. Up until now, there's still no way forward, but they're trying. But let's see. You want to read some more about that story and get more information, go ahead and read it. But it leads to the big header there. GBV Summit Rage, show us the money. Activists call on President Cyril Ramaphosa to prove his support for a fight against gender-based violence. They say he isn't doing enough. Is he really doing more, or is he doing less? Well, President concedes the government hasn't done enough, promises real money would be set aside, page 3. So is it about the money, and what will the money do for GBV? That's a question to ask. Let's go to another story quickly. Nyati was right about Eskom B, page 4. That's where you find that story. And we'll talk about Eskom. Well, read up and you'll get to know some more. Don't forget, South Africa's equally been battling a load shedding, and of course, you talk about oil and gas. I think it's quite generic, and it's a problem Africa is equally dealing with. But read this particular story to know what the economy looks like. Shenge defends King's forehead anointing. Page 2, something that's got to do with tribe and all that. Read about it too. Protect public entities from ANC faction fights. Page 19. That's all we have on front page of the Sowetan.
All right, now let's head over to Kenya as we look at what's happening on the Daily Nation. On the front page, taking stock, hits and misses of new era. 50 days of Ruto regime. Today marks the 51st day, of course, of President William Ruto, and amidst the optimism of the new regime, we're seeing lots of attacks and their expectations of the promises that he has, given the people of Kenya. And we're seeing how there are conversations about how he will navigate the oil crisis, taxation headache, and Atate capture probe. Now, still talking about President William Ruto, there are conversations about fuel prices, and they're saying that President Ruto's promise of cheaper fuel might not happen anytime soon as a result of the OPEC announcing plans to increase the pain at the pump after it targeted to cut global production by 2 million barrels a day. We're going to be talking about fuel crisis as well in other parts of the continent much later on in the show. At the top of the paper, we have Ahmed Nasser and Kip Korir in ugly court battle on page 2. In documents filed at the High Court in Milimani, the senior lawyers are attacking each other's reputation in the legal practice by raising claims of extortion, blackmail, intimidation, and professional misconduct. There's also stories on state capture, when looking at the 50 days of Ruto regime, state capture, cost of living, fuel crisis, and more taxes. And there's a photo there of a woman looking really sick. It says life of misery for Kenya's poor cancer patients. So it was a very sad story there, basically talking about how her family refused to tell her that she had cancer, even up until death, because they were afraid of it breaking her spirit and they didn't have enough to be able to take care of her. And it's just really sad. But that's all that we can take this morning on the Daily Nation in Kenya. Let's head out.
All right, let's go straight to Uganda this time, and let's talk about that big picture on the front page there. I think it's high time Ugandans now say what is going on. But let's tell you about this. Spy Nation, that's what it's captioned. Spy Nation, Daily Monitor, Spy Nation. It says Big Brother. We're talking about Big Brother, the reality series, but of course that header is used there. Of course, that little caption, Big Brother, a claim by a group that State House contracted them to hack social media accounts of opponents of President Museveni in the run-up to the 2021 elections has lifted the veil of deepening state espionage against citizens. Story on page 4 and 5. And it goes on to say 40% cash claim. A group of cybersecurity experts claim they were entitled to 40% of an undisclosed sum to hack social media accounts and spy on them. Who are these people? Is Museveni involved? Does he have questions to answer? Well, I think this story would be deepened, as it uses the word deepen as well. You read some more when you go to the pages 4 and 5. The president himself, what has he got to say? Well, I think he's busy battling with the situation they have at hand, the Ebola situation. But let's go straight to...
Not just the Ebola situation. I think on the other hand, the drama that his son is causing, and exactly, the Wuzi project and his Twitter fingers.
Saying he's going to be the next president and he's going to be very tough.
I can imagine what it will be like.
That's what he says. Let's go to another story on the Daily Monitor. Page 2 and 3. 23 catch Ebola after exhuming a body.
Oh dear.
23 catch Ebola after exhuming a body.
The question is, why did they exhume a body? What were they looking for? Are they not aware that Uganda is currently battling a different strain of Ebola and that in the process of doing that, they can expose themselves?
All right. Let's take just one more before we go. Drink spiking at a new high, according to police. So this was the same story in the United Kingdom this morning, where they say a lot of people are engaged in drinking of alcohol at least in a week. And then we have a similar story on the front page of Daily Monitor in Uganda.